Hi there, it's Nicole for Lawn Fawn, and today I have a card featuring some Valentine's Gumballs, and I've used the Sweet Smiles stamp set with some other Lawn Fawn stamps and dies to create this Valentine's themed gumball card today. I'm going to start by stamping the gumball machine and the individual gumballs on some smooth white cardstock using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. This is a great ink that will not bleed when using Copic markers. For the pink gumballs, I'm using R81, R83, and R85. I'm using about 3 shades for the gumballs. You could use as many colors as you wanted to. I tried to keep with pinks and reds for a more love or Valentine's themed card. For the red gumballs, I'm using R24, 29, and 39. And then for the magenta gumballs, I'm using RV63, 55, and 66. And this is going to give me a nice assortment of pinks and reds for my gumballs here. I'm going to quickly color in the rest of these. I'm going to speed through this. It's just the same thing. I purposely went one gumball at a time instead of trying to do maybe all the light pinks and then all the reds and then all the magenta ones, so that I didn't end up with any 2 gumballs of the same color next to each other. By coloring them each individually, I was able to make sure that no light pinks were touching, no magentas were touching, no reds. It doesn't really matter. It definitely would be okay if you did that. I just kind of think it looks a little bit more visually pleasing if they aren't. It gives a nice assortment of the gumballs. Finish coloring in these last 4. I definitely tried to keep my darkest shade where the gumballs touch one another, if possible, to give that illusion of some shadowing where they naturally would be a bit darker since they're next to another gumball. I'm also going to color in those 3 individual gumballs over to the right. I stamped 4, one of them didn't stamp very clearly, so I'll just be coloring in 3 of those with the same 3 color combinations. So there'll be one of each of those individual gumballs. You definitely don't have to do this. I chose to do 2. I'm going to have 2 laying on the kind of the ground or next to the gumball machine on the left side and 1 on the right. Once I have the gumballs colored in, I can color in the rest of the image. For the gumball machine, I'm going to stick to pinks this time. A lot of times the gumball machines are red, which definitely would be very cute and fun, but I decided to go with my favorite light pink color combination just to mix it up a little bit and make it a little bit more different and interesting. So I'm coloring in the base of the gumball machine and some of the accent areas with R81, 83, and 85. These are the same colors I used for the pink gumballs. Make sure get that blended really well. Once I have that colored in, I can go ahead and move on to the other areas on the image. Add just a tiny bit more shading before I move on here with my 2 darker colors and then blend them out, of course, with my lightest. For any of the kind of grayish or pieces that would be more like a metal where the gumballs actually come out, I'm using some cool gray markers in C2, 5, and 7. The handle and that little border there are going to be a little bit lighter, so I'll stick to my 2 lighter colors for those areas. I can go back in and darken up with my C7 if it blends out a little too much. And then for the glass portion of the gumball machine, instead of leaving it plain white, I'm going to go around the images with my BG10. This is a great cool shadow, and it's really going to give a little bit more of the illusion of the gumballs in the machine and some glass around them instead of leaving that plain white. To blend that out, I'm going to use my Colorless blender. And that top red gumball on the left, I slightly got out of the line a little bit, so I'll fix that too. Plus, I'm adding some nice little highlight areas on the gumball with my Colorless blender. I'm going to take the chisel tip of my Colorless blender and push that red ink back into that gumball here. I guess I'll do that in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and add those accents to my individual gumballs as well. And then I'm going to take the adorable face images from the Sweet Smiles stamp set and add faces to all of the gumballs. You definitely do not have to do this. You could leave them without the faces if you prefer. I just think they are so cute and fun and add such personality to the image. So I love to add these to this particular stamped image, especially some of them that have that kind of look like, oh, they're getting squished or whatever. So if you place those faces strategically on some of those gumballs that maybe, you know, are underneath or in between two and look kind of like they're getting squished, you really add some fun personality to the card. I'm also stamping faces on those 3 individual gumballs. I don't want to leave those out. And then for any of the faces that have a tongue sticking out, I'm going to take one of my red Copic markers and go in and color in the tongue. Here's that chisel tip where I'm pushing that red ink back inside the gumball. I was talking about that a little bit ago. I'm going to take the coordinating Sweet Smiles dies now and die cut the gumball machine and the individual gumballs. So I'll run it through once and die cut one of the gumballs and the machine, and then run it through 2 more times using that gumball die to get both of those, or those remaining 2 gumball pieces. Once I have all of my die cuts, I can go ahead and add a little bit of personalization or additional personalization to my images by taking the Sakura black gel pen and adding some dot detail there for the eyes. It's just really going to make the eye areas pop. You could also use it for the mouths if you wanted to. The black ink I used here, the black licorice ink from Lawn Fawn, stamped really nice and crisp, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm also going to take the stitched border die there. You can kind of see along the bottom of the screen, and die cut a 2.5 inch wide by 5.5 inch long strip of watercolor cardstock with that on both sides to give it a nice stitched edge. And before I do any more work on my card, because I know that the glossy accents is going to take forever to dry, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the glass portion of my gumball machine with glossy accents and set that aside while I work on the rest of the card. And that's going to need to sit for quite a while to be nice and dry by the time I put my card together. I would even recommend probably letting it sit overnight if you can. On this watercolor border that I have added some stitching detail, I'm going to apply some Festive Berries Distress ink to the very edge. Then I'm going to blend out with some Picked Raspberry Distress ink and finish with some Spun Sugar Distress ink. This is going to give a nice ombre effect of light pink to red. And I'm purposely leaving just a little area at the top with hardly any ink. I'm going to go ahead and take the Distress sprayer filled with water, spritz water on that, let it sit for maybe about 30 seconds, and then blot that dry, and I'm going to be left with a great watercolor distress background. You could definitely hit it with a heat tool now to speed up the drying, or you can let it air dry, which is what I did. I am going to take the Tiny Hearts here stencil from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to apply all 3 colors of the distress inks that I used here on that strip, starting with my darkest color near the bottom, kind of following the same pattern that I used when applying the ink to that panel, and then the Picked Raspberry, and then the Spun Sugar. I'm purposely not worrying too much if I get ink in all of those heart areas. I wanted it to be or appear a little bit random. I'll set that aside, and then I'm going to work on the background panel of my card. I'm only going to be using the Picked Raspberry and Spun Sugar Distress inks for my panel. I've die cut this watercolor cardstock to 5.5 by 4.25 inches. And again, I am not going to apply my ink all the way to the top edge of my panel. Instead, focusing on most of the panel, just not all of it. Again, I'm going to spritz it with water and then dry it with blot it with a dry paper towel. Once both of these panels are completely dry, I can go ahead and start putting my card together and adding those last finishing touches. So I am going to start with my Glossy Accents is still wet, but I need it to kind of figure out where I want to put my greeting. I'm going to use part of a greeting, or the Happy Valentine's Day greeting from the Happy Everything stamp set, and also a greeting from the Sweet Smiles stamp set. So I'll start with the Happy Valentine's Day, and I'm going to ink that up with Lobster ink from Lawn Fawn, stamp that, and then I'm going to take the plastic Flamingo ink, ink up the You're So Sweet greeting from the Sweet Smiles stamp set, and stamp that right above Happy Valentine's Day so that my greeting reads, You're So Sweet, Happy Valentine's Day. I've die cut a couple borders from watercolor cardstock using the Stitched Scallop Borders die. This is the largest die from that die collection. I'm going to secure that on the top and bottom of my strip and then apply foam adhesive to the back of my strip, peel off all that backing paper, and attach that to my 5.5 by 4.25 background. This is going to leave me with a really pretty tone-on-tone background, but it's going to be broken up by that kind of sweet and lovely scallop border. Using some glue dots, I'm going to add those to the back of my images, the gumball machine and the gumballs themselves. I'm going to start with the gumball machine. Going to make sure I get that placed where it needs to go. Then I will add those medium-size Zots glue dots from Thermoweb behind the gumballs and attach those on either side of the gumball machine, peeking out there from the edges. I'm going to secure the whole panel now to a side fold card base from Simon Says Stamp and finish with a sprinkling of clear and light pink sequins from Pretty Pink Posh to finish off this sweet Valentine's Gumballs card. Thanks for watching this video showcasing Lawn Fawn stamps and dies used to create a Valentine's themed card. The supplies I've used to create this card are listed and linked below the video on YouTube. Please subscribe for weekly card making and stamping videos. Here are a couple more Lawn Fawn videos you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.